Solidarity and shalom. Sorry for the delay on this one, and sorry for the odd time of the streaming of this one. But this required me to dig back into the governance of China so I could give y'all a clear indication of what the new global strategy actually means. If we're going to talk about this is going to be specifically about China's foreign policy today, and exactly what it we're going to be explaining what it is. Up until the death of Mao, China was very involved with, and even into the 80s, was very involved in arming other militant revolutionary groups across the world for a long, long time. And for a while, that was, the standard for the USSR, for the GDR, China, major socialist countries during the Cold War era. But after the Cold War era, China sort of insulated itself and started working on its own development internally, peaceful development. And so this is what, and through this peaceful development, this new global strategy started to take form. Like all Chinese things, like all Chinese theory, it's something that takes, form, the decade or so previous, and it is codified or synthesized by the party leadership. Now Xi Jinping doing it and laying it out for us in simplistic terms, thankfully, in the governance of China. So what we're going to look at exactly what the new global strategy is now. And we have a couple of bullet points here I'm going to bring up. So some of the bullet points that Xi Jinping talks about in the governance of China is peaceful development, new model of major country relations, neighborhood diplomacy, cooperation with developing countries, and multilateral relations. Now let's go into a little bit of what this means. When it comes to the peaceful development, the overall Xi Jinping and the party stresses the overall need to sustain an amicable external environment conducive to a long-term peaceful economic development. The promotion of more cooperative and collaborative, aka win-win, mutualistic patterns of interstate relations, and an emphasis on improving China's relations with neighboring countries on the basis of friendship, equality, sincerity, reciprocity, that's a hard word to say, and inclusiveness. Opposition to Cold War era adversarial zero-sum thinking policies, quote, expansionism, hegemonism, and power politics. The promotion of a comprehensive common and cooperative security, architecture for Asia and the world, a defensive military stance toward the outside world that eschews arm racing and military threats to others. Respect for different social systems and development paths and non-interference in the internal affairs of other nations. The resolute defense of China's sovereignty, territorial integrity, security, and development interests. The peaceful resolution of disputes among nations through dialogue and consultation. Support for the creation of a more just and equitable international order within the general context of existing global and regional regimes, and a commitment to the deepening economic reform, in part through China's expanding involvement in the international system and the, quote, open world economy. And in volume 3, it sort of reinstates these older concepts too, that are a part of the new global strategy. Let me just list them for you. A routine and consistent pairing of the desire for peaceful development and sustainability with an assertion of resolute defense of China's core interests centered on sovereignty and territorial integrity, security, and development. An enhanced emphasis on reassuring other nations that China will never seek development at the expense of another country's interests. Let me reassert this. An enhanced emphasis on reassuring other nations that China will never seek development at the expense of any other country's interests. The enunciation of specific set medium and long-term development goals, the 2-century goals, linked with the new concept of the Chinese dream, all directed at attaining a long-standing objective of creating a strong and wealthy China at peace with outside powers. The creation of a new international, especially Asian, economic and financial institutions, such as the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank and the Silk Road Fund, and I would reckon to say also the Belt and Road Initiative. The enunciation of, the enunciation of a new strategy for a large-scale cross-continental economic development, one belt, one road concept linking China and the Pacific with Europe, the Baltic regions via both land and maritime routes. A strong emphasis on the leading role of the United Nations in specific areas, including most notably cybersecurity and counterterrorism. The espousal of cooperative relations among major powers through the adoption of a new concept, the new model of major country relations, and a clear rejection of the notion that any nation, presumably including China, can serve as a development model for other nations, asserting the unique national peculiarities. And this is the new global strategy for China. And for those who don't really understand what's going on here, China is seen the failures of Cold War politics and how it led to the dissolution of socialism in a dozen or so countries, or dozens of countries, I should say. And they have found a new global strategy of peaceful development, mutual win-win cooperation with developing nations, the institution of the Belt and Road Initiative, and taking defensive postures and never interfering with the internal affairs of other countries. Now, if this isn't clear, if this doesn't help people who didn't understand why China does the things that they do, here you go. This is the new global strategy. It's not very complex. Anyone who has seen what China is doing could probably ascertain what is going on. But I want to stress how they are trying to mutually cooperate and do win-win development in developing countries to alleviate poverty, for the alleviation of poverty's sake, and to build goodwill with countries. Look what they did in Namibia, a country that since its independence had been strictly capitalist. They said they're strictly capitalist social democrats, the SWAPO party. But in 2019, they adopted socialism with Namibian characteristics due to the cooperation with the PRC. And now socialism is being developed in Namibia. So this is a very interesting new concept for trying to spread socialism without being hegemonic, by showing the merits and helping people and hoping that they adopt it themselves. Well, thanks everyone for watching. I know this isn't the most exciting stuff to look into, but it's good for us to help us understand what China is doing in the world. Thank you, everyone. And oh, by the way, my source is The Governance of China by Xi Jinping. The bullet points were written down and were written down by me previously. I'd gotten it from the book. So if anyone is wondering the source on that, there's also other academic papers out there that you can look at that can help summarize this in a very non-biased way, I suppose. And they exist out there, and I use those to help me with my bullet points too. I used the Hoover Institute, which isn't by any means communist, but they had collected lists of the ideas, and it helped me with my own bullet points here too. So I know it's not easy to go out and just get the book for free, or just to get the book in general, The Governance of China. So there are academic papers out there that you guys can read that they're a secondary source. You know, their source is the book itself, and it's fairly professional, and you can reference back to the book from what they are referencing themselves. So you can rest assured that, you know, what you're looking at is legitimate and not just made up. All right, everyone, enough talking of sources. Thank you so much for watching. Look out for the next video. It's going to be on La Shenhua. So, solidarity and shalom. Bye-bye.